So in 2016, I was just a normal mom, well, I don't know if I was normal, but a wife, mother of 2 boys. My main job is to be a great wife, a good Christian in the community, and a leader in my business, which is oil and gas. And so my family knew 4 families in 2016 whose daughters were groomed and lured by traffickers. The first one was a story that came across Facebook. It was a posting. Didn't really know the guy, but he was in my industry. We'd seen each other before. And that it sounded very sinister, what he posted, was that one day his daughter disappeared. She was no longer there, and he posted that he needed help to find her. They found the child in 8 days. But then you never knew what the story really was. You knew something was sinister, somebody else was behind it, but you never knew exactly what happened. Fast forward then again, 3 months later, I got a call from a friend. I had been known to advocate for girls to get into STEM-related careers in underrepresented areas. I was also probably a big mouth. That's probably a good word, right, David? A big mouth in trying to help the girls in Chibok, Nigeria, get rescued. And so I'd advocated for policies, done a few rallies here in Houston. So this friend of mine said, look, we know you know a number of legislators. There's a little girl out of Katy who is missing. And can you help us, give us all your information or resources? So my mom, or my sister actually, had been working on this cause. My cause was STEM-related careers, and my sister's was human trafficking. And she had helped break up a brothel here in Houston, just about 70 feet from her home. And so I called her and I got her engaged, gave her some of my resources to my friends that were in the legislature, and that girl was found in 35 days. And then 2 months later, another call that a little girl out of West University, yet another area here in Houston, quite affluent, was also missing. She was gone within 3 days. We had recovered her. She was looking at an app on her phone where she was hitching a ride to California with the promise of being able to sell apartments for $10,000 a month and live free from her parents and their, controlling ways, right? And then a month later, a call from somebody that I used to work with at an oil and gas company whose daughter was missing for 2 weeks. So this is 4 girls in 6 months whose daughters were groomed and lured by traffickers after you figured out what the story was. In December of 2016, myself and one of the 2 fathers of the survivors decided to have an event in an area in which I live, because I didn't know about the global. What you just heard is the talk about the global problem, but I needed to focus on my backyard because I didn't think any of my friends and the people that lived around me knew what was going on. So we had a big event at a high school. The principal actually used her distribution list of parents to get people there. There were over 600 parents that showed up. And we believe 4 years ago, it was one of the catapulting ways that the Houston community came together to understand what was going on, because you had a man that looked like them who was saying my daughter was groomed and lured by traffickers, who was willing to share his story and be vulnerable enough to do it. So we did that. That was in December of 2016. In January, February, and March of 2017, we started doing presentations all over the city. Myself and my partner, John Clark, have now been in front of over 60,000 people in the city of Houston, trying to create awareness, engage, and educate everyone. However, in March of 2017, I got a Facebook message. We'd started a site. Got a Facebook message from a 21-year-old girl who said, my 16-year-old cousin has been missing for 6 months, and I believe this is her. Here is her missing persons report, and here is her Backpage ad. I had no idea what the hell Backpage was at the time, right? I was clueless. Some of the people you're here today have been in this space for much longer than I have, abolitionists before their time, and great respect because they have been fighting this thing long before it became a trend. And so I took and I tried to understand what Backpage was. Illicit photos you can't even imagine that look like you're a child that comes from a suburban area. And so with that, then I started contacting, we got a hold of an investigator, an organization called Elijah Rising, and then started going out. Within 2 weeks, we had recovered this girl with SWAT team. She came out and I was standing in the parking lot, I thought she would look at me like I was her hero. She was stoned, totally out of her mind, and absolutely looked at me like I was the next bitch that just came around. And so, stunned by what was going on, I then became obsessed because within 24 hours, we lost her. And I couldn't imagine why someone would want to go back to being enslaved or being told and controlled on what to do and turn 20 and 30 tricks in a couple of days. So with that, I got obsessed. In 2 weeks, we had her back. And then we were like, when we got her back, we didn't know what the hell to do with her. So we had to put her in a psych facility to lock her down for 2 weeks so that she didn't leave again. I was then determined to figure out why in the hell, if this is such an issue, as you started to do research, as this was such an issue, why in the world we're having to put these kids in a facility that absolutely doesn't understand how to treat them and help them. So we went on. Within that month, I had already gotten calls. We'd already recovered two other girls. So I had 3 girls. So if I'd only known 4 girls in a matter of 6 months whose daughters were groomed and lured by traffickers, these girls, in literally 1 month had helped recover 3 girls with other. By the way, I didn't do it myself. I love a good story. I could bust it down and go in with guns like Tim. I'd love to do that. I'd probably need to get his card. And so, but this was a much different story. The storyline was the same in some sense, but the details very different. When we got all 3 of these girls out of these psych facilities, that's the only place we could, keep them in one place. I then had to beg a nonprofit to take them, keep them there until I could find a place in the country that would be able to give them trauma-informed care, because this was a new word for me too, TBRI and trauma-informed care. I'd never heard of it before. And so I had to learn about that and try to. Across the country, there was no place to put these 3 girls. So literally no capacity. But then you hear we're a hub, we know it's happening domestically, but no facilities and capacity to help these kids. So then I said, okay, well, let's figure out where this is going. So we called every nonprofit. In fact, some of the nonprofits you'll see here today, what I did is entice them with food and get them to come to my house. So now we work with over 40 plus nonprofits who come and collaborate with us on a monthly basis. Well, now we're doing it via Zoom, but collaborate with us on a monthly basis to understand and keep us abreast of what's going on in the trafficking world and how we can help do what? Fill gaps. Fill gaps. And so if you're sitting in that chair today and you want to know how in the world can I tackle this or do anything, get your ass out of your chair, figure out where the gaps are, and either start working with these nonprofits to volunteer, to give your money, to give your resources, and the least of all, just speak with your mouth about what's going on in our country. And so we worked with them to understand the gaps. There were 3 gaps they identified. They said, Jennifer, when we first recover a girl or a boy, a man, we don't know where to take them first. We don't have a place to take them first. To assess them and stabilize them. So we need what's called emergency assessment centers. Okay, got 1 gap. Number 2, long-term aftercare. So today you're going to hear an organization called redM Ministries that's going to speak about long-term aftercare. The masters in this space, and they need more resources and help. So we need more of them to be across our country. And then the 3rd one is outreach and intervention, where we have to go into strip clubs, into the massage parlors, into our schools, by the way, where your kids are also being trafficked out of, right, and groomed, into our churches, and spread the word and outreach into these certain places. Amazing, the tracks. So these are basically streets where you can go and find children walking up and down the street, half naked, along with women and men. And oh, by the way, really nice cars driving by. So that we need more outreach intervention. So with that determination, okay, we're going to go fill the gaps. So what we did is systematically decide that we were going to knock out each gap at a time. So now what we did is started what's called the Houston 20. And the Houston 20 is meant to be the next Mothers Against Drunk Driving, where across our country, we will have 20s and their main goal is to fundraise and support the nonprofits in this space that are out on the streets doing the hard work with these people. So the Houston 20 now, just recently we had a huge boxing event. We come up with all kinds of creative ways to raise money. We raised $1.1 million, paid cash for a former convent to now be Houston's first emergency assessment for domestic minor sex trafficking victims, which are girls. And so that's a way you can help. And you don't think it's actually possible, but as you keep going, you can make it happen. And so that will be our first emergency assessment. And then as we have these other tertiary projects, as we ask the nonprofits that we meet with monthly, what are their list of needs? And somehow, some way, we find one of our friends that can fill that gap either by donation or by going and get the equipment or the resources that they need. So that's the Houston 20. The next thing is I work in the oil and gas business. So I'm an executive in the oil and gas business focused on primarily technology. But I said, now, does my industry know what's going on and how we contribute and how we can help, more importantly? And so in the oil and gas business, we invest heavily in our communities. And so why would we not? If we can invest in fixing roads and air and water, why in the world are we not around humanity and saving lives? In which we know that this particular epidemic targets places where there's a dense population of men, they make lots of money, and they're away from their families and children and wives. So prime area for where we do business and operate. So myself and David Reed and a woman named Alexandra Alvarez started an organization called the Oil and Gas Trafficking Advocacy Group, OGTAG. We now have 55 plus major oil and gas companies meeting on every other month basis to understand where they too can fill the gaps. And the way is awareness, education, get them to engage from a volunteering standpoint, and then invest where the big dollars are, the corporate dollars. So with the oil and gas group, that's what we're doing. And now we have other organizations like the real estate industry that wants to come to play and have been. Obviously the hotel industry and entertainment, that's been coming to the table. So what did we do? We just looked at our network. Who our people are at home around us in our village, and who our people are that work with us at work, and start creating awareness and education, engaging them, and eventually giving resources investment. So if you look at the 3 gaps, emergency assessment needs, so to fit the survivor, because if you look at this as purely a supply chain, right? It's a value chain. You have your survivors or your victims, you have your buyers, you have your sellers, which I call the pimps and traffickers, and then you have the bystanders. And the most powerful person and the most powerful group in that equation is the bystander. And we are definitely standing on the side. If you look at the mass that's happening, the number of us that are involved are very few. So I sequester you, I beg you to get involved in this issue, because you too, the minute we've forgotten when it was just those that were either undocumented or in foster care families or in underrepresented areas, we forgot to come to the table then. But now we're telling you it looks like you. It's come to the areas in which you go to school, your kids go to church, and where you're letting them play out on your streets. And then more importantly, you're letting them play online. So that's one of the things so now we got the oil and gas tribe. So this huge thing we call Fight for Us. And it's the ability to collaborate with all the nonprofits, law enforcement and government, the community, and corporate dollars, and healthcare as well. So it's gonna take all of us in a collaborative effort, and I think my colleagues are gonna say this as well, to come together, understand where our space is, understand where there are gaps, realize that not one organization or one person or one group can solve it all. But together as a community, we can definitely make a dent. And so I'll give you this, that the most important things right now and the biggest gaps that we have is to address the survivors and the victims, to create capacity so that they can go get long-term healing and trauma-informed care. And so to do that, we need you to know a couple things. One is engage with any nonprofit. It doesn't matter which one you choose off this stage. It doesn't matter how you choose to offer your resources or go speak or go use awareness or education. But just don't do anything. Just don't do nothing is what I'm trying to tell you. Do anything, don't do nothing is what I'm trying to say. And so with that, I thank you for your time. I bow down to the people that are going to be on this stage today who've been in this fight for so long. And then I will tell you this, go to www.fightforus.org. It will lead you to a lot of the nonprofits that are here today so that you can engage with them and go straight to their sites. It tells you what they do and tells you how you can engage, and most importantly, tells you their biggest needs so that they too can fight for us.